In this video, we are going to look at how to quickly convert an integer to decimal. Last week, we were looking at the median absolute deviation. And as I pointed out, if let's say there's an aggregate that's looking at a whole number, even though the output should be a decimal, it will come out as a rounded up whole number, or rounded down whole number in this case. So let's look at the table here. Use the database, and then we'll select star from AdMed. And what we'll see, I'm going to do some live coding here, is that all of these values are integers. And so there's a lot of techniques we can actually use to cast an integer to a decimal, and some of them are pretty straightforward. For instance, the most obvious one, I'll just do it this way, is to just do cast, and we do vol as, and we say decimal 13.6 in this case. We will use 13.6 because I believe the other ones are going to come out as a similar format, and we see that's the cast. We'll say using cast. Whoops. And the other one, this is one of my favorite techniques to use because it's very useful when you have two integers, and some people will cast both integers as decimals, but it's not necessary, as we'll see. Let's say all we have to do here is just do val divided by 1.0, and we'll be using division. And if we divide, as we'll see, it comes out as a decimal. The reason why this is key is, let's suppose we had two columns. We had a vol 1 and vol 2. All we would have to do is for vol 2 have that cast as the decimal. We wouldn't need to cast both of them as a decimal. That's why it's a useful development technique. And then, of course, another way that we can do it is using multiplication. And keep in mind, with both division and multiplication, anything divided by 1 is itself, and anything multiplied by 1 is itself. So this is using multiplication. And so if we do this, of course, we see that it's going to take the format of the multiplied. So this is like if we had, let's say, the algorithm that we had. We could use this especially in a principle of, math, but we had val 1 multiplied by val 2. We could cast one of those as a decimal, but we could actually just multiply that output times 1.0, right? And we would get our decimal value if we needed to have it to turn out to be a decimal. And it's the same thing with division. Now, what I will say is that if we have an existing decimal value and we play with an integer, of course, it's going to come out as a decimal value unless we're doing some type of rounding. But what we want to be careful is where that's at, because we want to make sure that it's going to come out. So, of course, obviously, testing is always going to be the most important. But as you see, we have various options other than using cast if we want. And that way, again, if you have, let's say, two columns and one of them is a decimal and one of them is not a decimal, you don't actually have to cast both of them to decimals. I see that every now and then in development. You can actually just cast, for instance, the divider by it or the multiplier by it, and you'll get it out the other way.